Hi, this is Tolec for the Andromeda Council. Today is Thursday, March 29th, 2018. Welcome to this continuing, edgy, informative, and revealing new series, Deep Disclosure, and Evolving Reality. Today's third segment is titled The Red Pill. As with my first two segments, my two high-level insider guests include M and Miss M. In our second segment, we addressed the positive energy of manifestation, the initial phase of the solar March energy wave event, a time traveler named Cosmo and the effect he had in M's life, the Mandela effect, who M and Miss M are relative to the looking glass, Ms. M's recent conversation with her people on the High Council, and more. In this third segment, M and Miss M will be addressing the recent solar and cosmic wave effects, the importance of the recent relocation of planet Earth to optimize the Golden Gate and its cause and effect on Venus, a unity timeline, more specific information on what happened to Marduk, the outcome of this beautiful planet Earth when her final higher dimensional shift happens, Imhotep's story of the Great Pyramid, light codes, light language, the seventh seal activation tool, about the foundation that M and Miss M will be establishing in Sedona, about no fear, positive truth, and the vortex, that M and Miss M know in the deepest ways possible that the light has won and it now has the upper hand, certain specifics about the Chinese elders, and more. So, welcome to segment 3 with my high-level insider guests, M and Miss M. So Miss M, thank you for taking of your personal time and your commitment to continue this this important Deep Disclosure series. I really appreciate it. It's good to have you guys again.
Glad to be here.
Yes, very glad to.
So I think the first thing we're going to do in order to kick off segment 3 is take an accounting and address 3 specific questions that came in as a result of the publication of segment 2 up onto YouTube. And we've reviewed 3 questions in brief, and you decided that they'd be worth reviewing. So I'll take the first one, and I'll read it in quotes. I would also like to ask if there's going to be a debt forgiveness event, because this is what will get the attention of all those who are behind in what is going on. As I said previously, I'm not sweating over receiving millions of dollars in my bank account, but I hope that we will receive money that was taken from us unlawfully, i.e. taxes, interest paid on loans, etc. So, what is the real actual debt forgiveness program? So, M, would you like to begin addressing this first question?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, there isn't an official program. There is an intent, and we have been asked to supply the means to do that. The ability to do that does rest with our team, and we absolutely have been in discussions with central banks and the like to forgive debt, clean the slate, create programs that are going to empower countries and people. And we have had a lot of plans, and we're implementing aspects of that behind the scenes with our crypto bank and cryptocurrency intentions.
Okay.
The notion that there's going to be a global currency reevaluation and a reset and these sorts of things, as we talked about in the first segment, is not exactly what has been intended. That was, as we told you then, quite a black op to disempower people, a psyop to cause people to sit around and wait.
Okay. So what is the debt forgiveness program as a concept in terms of which entities are being forgiven debt? Are they countries? Are they? How far down the pecking order does?
The intent is to go as far as we can, but we have to be in agreement with various parties to accomplish that, to address all the way down to even a student loan or a credit card or
so it's the
a mortgage. There's been a lot of fraud.
Full spectrum.
In the last segment, we talked about, the Federal Reserve pretty much has been controlling our interest and as a fraudulent entity has been printing money. And why should we be accountable to something that's all been perpetrated in fraud? So we wish to clear as many things as we can to empower nations and people.
Okay.
Ms. M, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the question's really great, and it's a great idea, because we do have to figure out a way to reach people who are not in the know or not following these kind of subjects. And so one way that you can reach them and wake them up and give them a little dose of reality is by affecting their financial situation. So it's really an excellent concept, and it is something that we have talked about. We don't know today what we are able to do as far as debt forgiveness is with what Em was talking about with student loans or credit card debt or home loans or situations like that. There have been talks about it. We do intend to address these issues. But as of right now, the first debts that are being eliminated are national debts for countries.
Okay.
Well, to add further to that, the cryptocurrency thing that I mentioned, we'd like to ultimately be able to have anybody get a wallet and receive funds that they can utilize to help them or get their project funded through this new means in the decentralized system. So those talks are on the table about how much we could do. And for example, the people that have picked up currencies, and we do want to do some kind of a prosperity program where they can get their money back and receive, some form of a multiplication on their original money, but more importantly, have access to a trust or a program that will fund not only those people, but everybody that has a good project. And so we have on the drawing board a variety of programs and ideas that we want to implement.
Yes, and it's important for me that everybody gets blessed and not just people that are holding currencies. That's a small fraction of the population, and it wouldn't address all of the issues. And, it's also another concept, this whole redistribution of wealth, that would address some of the issues. Like, the reality is most people in the world are saddled with large amounts of debts, and especially people in the younger generations that got saddled with student loans and are starting their lives out with a lot of debt. And while that is a reality, the amount of that debt is far less than what people believe they're entitled to receive from prosperity packages or from an RV scenario. So to get people back to square one so that they're free of these financial shackles,
sure,
would cost far less than handing out like millions of dollars to individuals. I think that the average person is less than $100,000 worth of debt. So
if I hear you correctly, there will be, if you will, countries large organizations, medium-sized, small, as well as individuals, that there will need to be specific programs for each level. And yes, you're going to take this debt forgiveness program concept down to the individual person and addressing some of their needs.
Well, that's our hope. But more importantly, think of the phrase, teach them how to build a fishing pole, teach them how to fish.
Oh, sure.
And they'll feed themselves.
Right, right.
So everything that we do, we ultimately want it to be a program that is empowering and helping. Also realize that because the cabal has been in power for so long, they've wanted to collapse countries. They've wanted to disempower people and pin them down, oppress them. And, one of the things that I want to do as one of the big programs to help make America great again is, with my IT background and expertise, what if everybody that went to the food stamp program put their skill set into a master database, a national database, and we bumped it up against Monster and Dice and all this. We could push a notification to your phone the next day with jobs all over the country. So there's just so many ways that we can help, but the intent was never there to help.
Yeah, I see it. So, and the concept there is, if you have access to those kinds of jobs, and people are providing a list of their gifts and their skills and their passions, then they can potentially get matched up to the right kind of work. And they'll have passion for what they do. That
same program is going to apply on a global scale, that if you want to get plugged into your passion and your purpose,
right,
you'll be in our global database, and you'll be able to find out, based on your parameters and your desires, where there's opportunities globally.
Wow.
So essentially, yes, there will be relief for individuals, but that comes in many different forms. And first and foremost, it comes from relieving the debt of the countries so that they can start to serve their people as opposed to oppress their people and enslave them. And so, a removal of these oppressive systems and a revamping of the systems to help instead of hurt is going to help individuals immediately, while we figure out a way that's fair and doable to help people on an individual level. I mean, there are a lot of people that live within their means and are still in debt, and because of the system that we have in place, there are also other people that live far beyond their means and have
racked up a lot of debt.
Right. So should that person get $1 million and the person that was responsible gets $100,000?
Good point.
How fair is that?
I think this is probably a good time to also address one of the updates that I was going to bring forth in this segment, pertaining to some secret meetings with the Council of Nine, is typically what they're referred to as.
Okay.
And you have to understand, in my deep background pertaining to all this, we've reached many agreements through negotiation with these Chinese elders to do particular things. And they often agree, but then when it comes down to the wire, they want to renegotiate. So this happened yet again, where an aspect of their greed has reared its ugly head, that they want a bigger piece of the pie than what we previously agreed to. And so this is actually, on one facet of what we're doing, slowed down the ability to do a massive reset, if you want to call it anything. And so we are pursuing other ways, because there are plenty of assets. There are, mountains of gold. There are bunkers of boxes. There are a variety of things that we can deploy and put to work. We do not need to have the Council of Nine be fully in agreement.
So if I understood M correctly, he was saying that essentially these Chinese elders with their alleged piles of cash don't really need to be part of this new financial system that's being built. And I see Ms. M nodding at me, and she has some comments on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I kind of see these Chinese elders as a continuation of this salvation myth. You know, a lot of people have told this story over and over on the internet that there are this group of, you know, benevolent Chinese elders, these generous benefactors that want to fund humanity into this golden age. And parts of that are true, but a lot of it is misguided. And the reality is that the reason these elders have negotiated or participated up to this point is because they don't have access to their own money.
All right. And why? So for people who aren't bankers, why is that?
Well, I think that you could maybe explain how that works.
Well, the short version is these people's money has probably been on deposit in accounts all across the globe for years and years and years. And because it's been on deposit with banks, the banks leverage that money many times over. So it's entwined like a multi-tentacled octopus. And the bankers can't untwine it. And the reason is that if they untwine the money and release it, then they have to go find new money to back the money they used to use for leveraging. So it's almost impossible to get that money untwined and unleveraged. So go ahead.
So this is their motivation for negotiating in the first place. It has nothing to do with their love of humanity, and that's been proven time and time again when their greed has prevented us from moving forward on some of these programs to serve the liberation of humanity. So the good news about that is, like you said in the beginning, that we don't need them to do this. And it's also another aspect of empowerment for us as individuals, that we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's been a group of people just like you that are working on this stuff at the highest levels to liberate this planet from the stronghold that the cabal has on it, financially and otherwise. And so that is the bright side of all of that, is that we don't need them to do this. We can do it without them, and we don't need to bow down to their greed.
Right. Em, I know that you mentioned that there's some corroboration to this information, some specific actions that were taken to tell these Chinese elders to basically go pound sand. Can you comment on that?
Well, before I would do that, there's a lot more detail to what's involved in enabling them to have access to their money and move their money and spend their money.
Okay.
A couple points along that line. You can't just, let's say you have a trust with 10 zeros in it. You can't utilize it because it has to be attached to an allocation of gold. And the gold is referred to as the golden root, and it needs to come from, our top guy that has the authority to do that.
Right, and not by name, but when you say top guy, what is his overall status? What is he responsible for?
He's the M1.
Ah, okay. The signatory on.
Mm-hmm. For the 128 families, he represents and has authority over all those assets.
Okay.
But what I was trying to demonstrate is there's a multifaceted set of reasons as to why they don't have access, let alone, let's say you did. Then you've got the Federal Reserve. They can steal your money, block your money.
Which they've done many times to many people.
And we've lost quite a bit of money that way.
Yeah.
So it's a very convoluted response to, a question that is not just very straightforward. There's a lot of explaining that could be done to why is there thousands of accounts out there with all these zeros behind it, and it's in these banks.
Right.
You're right to a certain extent that some of the banks, they don't even have it anymore. They've traded it.
That's right.
Whether it's on ledger or off ledger. In order to have it on ledger, you would have to have the front codes matching the back codes. So there's just a lot of content to understand every aspect of this. And so now coming to your question.
And so to get us back to center point, which is debt forgiveness program, this topic is about the fact that we collectively really don't need the Chinese elders as part of the equation to create a debt forgiveness program.
Right, and as I was saying, coming back to that, I would think it's important for our listeners to understand that because of this highest level authority over all of these assets, really, if they don't want to participate, they'll be left penniless. It could come to force to remove it from their country. But thank God we don't need to approach that yet, because there are other means to get things rolling. But yeah, they could be left in the dust with nothing. So if any of those guys are listening, stop being greedy. You're supposed to, as the story, as I was updated, goes, when I first got into this is all the people of the planet's money. It's for the golden age. And so do your job and, cooperate with that man that said you're going to be left in the dust.
Okay, thank you. Ms. M?
Yeah, so there's another element to this debt forgiveness that has to do with these trust accounts. Now, and I've seen a lot of questions on there about them, and so we'll respond to those now. Yeah, we do read your comments, so keep it nice, people. Anyways, people ask about these big name trusts like the Hidalgo or the Santa Romana or the Rodriguez or the Saint Germain trusts, and there's a little bit more to that I will let M share with you.
Okay, well, there's many zeros in those trusts, but they're not there anymore because it all has been pulled back to a master trust that is designed to protect everything, and that trust is under the signatory control of our top partners. And these trustees or custodians, there's a lot of them out there, they've never had access to these zeros anyway. Their names were put out there to be sort of a buffer or a filter on an account, just to be a placeholder in essence, because without the back code they could never have done anything anyway. And there are others out there that think that they have some big trust with all this money in it, and they really don't, and they don't even have a way to verify whether it's still in there or not. Okay. But this was done to prepare for what we're doing and to stop all the cabal efforts to steal from all these different trusts, because they have successfully, and with the help of some individuals, have in the past been able to steal a lot of this money. And so that was the main reason.
Okay.
Prevent any further misappropriation of funds.
Now that we've addressed the topic of the debt forgiveness program to the best degree we can, given the time allotted, we're going to move on to question 2 that was sent in regarding segment 2. So I'll just read this one as well. What kind of connection, direct or otherwise, do you have with the Alliance? Em, do you want to take that first?
I thought that would be fairly obvious, but I can certainly clarify. When we talked about who was seen in the looking glass and who the Master General was, and those sort of things, maybe people don't really understand what the Alliance is, or the Earth Alliance is. It's the White Hat team. It's the people in the military at the highest level. It's the agency people that are all white hat aligned for this divine, I like to call it divine, and you'll see why in later parts of this show, because there's clearly divine orchestration. I mean, we have phone calls show up on a daily basis with people that have a perfect piece to the puzzle, and were they guided by some synchronicity engineer or the Master General himself? So this term white hat, originated some time ago as well, and when I was doing this a decade ago, and my exposure even 20 years ago, the people that had the intent to do good for humanity are the white hats, of course. And so the alliance itself really has gained momentum and speed and terminology, probably from the likes of Corey Good and David Wilcock. But we have been on the front line doing this for a long time, and so we are beyond integral to what that means. And I hope that clears it up.
Okay. Ms. M, I can tell that you'd like to contribute to this, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, just to make this a little bit more clear and maybe direct, is the alliance was created by the Master General, who is a mentor of ours, and two other individuals that we'll refer to as the Old Man and the Old Man.
Real old man.
Real old man.
Okay.
And the work that we've done over the last decades has brought other patriots into the fold who've seen what we've done to change things in big ways from behind the scenes. And so the alliance is comprised of mostly agency folks who are white hats that we refer to, and are patriots from around the globe that want to see the liberation of humanity, and three civilians who include myself, my partner here, and our other partner we refer to as the M2.
Okay.
Well, it might even be beneficial to share a brief story with what Miss M just said. Recently, well, maybe not that recently, it was probably about a couple years ago. No, it wasn't. Okay. It was actually only a handful of months ago that more agency people were joining the White Hat Alliance because of some stories, some reference to some things that we have done, and particularly some things that I did in terms of moving mountains, with no real help.
Okay.
We have accomplished so much, with essentially no funds. We actually, to some degree, have sort of a superhero status. Like, how on earth have you guys done so many things with so little? And, they really were in awe and wanted to join forces and help us because, if we can do this, just think how much further we can move with, the alignment as it's grown.
Right.
And when these people join us, the more, the merrier. Yeah. And so it's going to even move faster and faster.
Yeah, the power of intention and collaboration and synchronicity, kind of all of those put together.
Which is another reason why we're disclosing this stuff.
Sure.
Number one, we want to dispel the fallacy and disempower this PSYOP effort to make people complacent and believe in the wrong thing. So we want you to believe in our hearts and our truth. And when that vortex is amplified and magnified, we're going to get this done sooner than ever.
Okay. So if I can kind of wrap up a summation for this topic, your involvement in what's called the Alliance has been direct from the beginning. Mm-hmm. You would be considered civilians in this aspect in terms of your contribution. And there's another, I don't know, call them 7 or 8 people that are at the highest levels of who used to be military, Secret Service, high-level 3-letter agency people, retired military, those kinds of folks. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you. So the third and final question that we're going to tackle from segment 2, people who responded, is the following. Do you have any sense for how soon a new global currency or U.S. Treasury dollar will be issued? M?
Okay, I'll take the first part of that question. And that is that we are doing everything we can to implement as soon as possible a new type of global currency utilizing cryptocurrency. The technology that was invented, whatever the purpose was, it's a good thing to have no middlemen and be decentralized and basically have a global solution where you can do a transaction. And there will be multiple currencies that we'll have in a universal exchange, and it'll be benchmarked against a coin that is backed by gold. So we have absolute plans to do that, and we're moving on it as fast as possible. In fact, I spent many hours this morning working on with the team on just that thing. Now, the second part of the question pertaining to the Treasury Reserve Note, or a TRN. It doesn't exist at present for a variety of reasons. It's not that it's not a bad idea or a good idea. There just isn't the availability of the allocation of gold that I spoke of before to properly do that. And the not the relationship as much as the agreements to put that into place. There are intents to do that, but it can't be done until several things have been agreed upon and the alignment with the gold is properly arranged. So there's no need to start another fiat currency. And certainly we do want to get rid of the Federal Reserve currency because the Federal Reserve is not a U.S. entity. So while the intent is good, we're not there yet.
Well, great answer. Thank you for that concise answer. I appreciate it. So, M and Miss M, you've both done a great job of addressing in some great detail the three questions that were of considerable value that came into us from our segment 2 publication. So let's get into the meat of this third show, segment 3. Ms. M has let me know that she'd like to address what transpired with this recent wave event. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you. Ms. M?
All right. So it was pretty intense. Now, we have been hit with these solar flares for a while now. It's not the first one that came,
Right.
and it won't be the last. It's just been the biggest one to date. And so a lot of things have shifted as far as 3D stuff because of the wave that came in. And so if you're following the news, you may have seen some of the bigger things that have happened in the 3D world, considering or in regards to some presidents and past presidents from around the globe that have been arrested on charges of corruption. The new spending bill that was passed over the last weekend, and some heads rolling in Washington. So we kind of have to look at these little things to see these little victories and see the progress that we're making. Because again, this is not just one event. It's a progression. It's a revolution that's happening. So that's how it's been affecting our movement in real terms, but also, you know, it has had a physical effect on a lot of us. So, you know, people may have been feeling nauseous or dizzy or anxious.
Yeah, like high vibration, not being able to sleep at night. Yeah.
Being up all night, tired all day.
Mm-hmm.
This one certainly...
Cranky.
Yeah.
This one certainly came with a lot of fatigue for me during the day, and then I'm up all night. So, so all that stuff is happening, and we've been getting calls from people, friends and family, some who don't know what's going on and are wondering, you know, what's happening to me? Am I losing my mind?
Right.
And so I just want to give you some tips on how you can learn to ride the waves.
Good point.
Because there are some things that you can do to feel better when this is happening. One is from, you know, knowing that it's not just you. You're not going crazy. The frequency on the planet is rising. You're getting hit with a wave of energy that can make you feel a little crazy. But it's not you. It's outside of you. So identifying that can really help with your reactions to emotional stimulation while this is happening. I think we have a tendency to get into arguments and to cling to our security and things that we wouldn't normally do outside of this outside influence. So keep that in mind. Remember that there's something bigger going on and that it's affecting you, but it's not being generated by you. Now, another thing is you need to ground yourself. So take off your shoes, go outside and stand on the earth and let that energy go into the ground so that you're not going to blast off into space. So that's another thing. And I know it sounds really simple, and the rest of the things that I'm going to tell you are also very simple, but they work. They're effective. So grounding is huge. Another thing that you can do is work with crystals. I like to wear them on my body, especially when I'm out in public. I'm often wearing crystal bracelets on my left hand that kind of create a barrier between me and everybody else's emotional field, so that I'm not walking into what everyone else is feeling, and I can differentiate between what's coming out of me and what I'm feeling from other people, because as our frequency raises, we have more of this empathic ability coming on.
Sensitivities.
Yeah. All of our senses are becoming heightened. So another thing that I like to do is get into water. Whether that's taking a bath or sitting in the shower, it soothes me, it calms me, and it helps me get out of this anxious feeling. So, if you don't have a bathtub, sit in your shower and let the water run on you. And it kind of cleanses all the attachments that you have going on, and it just relaxes your body and gets your blood flowing and flushes out all of the negativity that's brewing up inside of you. So those are just some simple things. I don't know if M has any other tools that he uses for coping with the
certainly.
waves.
I like to use various herbs, valerian root or passion flower, or a mixture, like a sleeping combination. I find that to be really good. Even though I had a lot of this kind of, I call them upgrades or integration, happening to me many years ago. So it's not really affecting me that much right now. But the other thing I wanted to say about it, though, is don't dip into fear, because fear has been a tool to disempower us and oppress us. So it's really important to realize that, like the Egyptians say, we are the stars, we came from the stars, we are returning to the stars. Sun consciousness, solar consciousness is source consciousness. And so this is just an aspect of yourself coming to, take you to a higher level. And so stay in a positive place in everything that we do.
That kind of echoes what I was talking about in the last show, that these waves amplify whatever it is you're feeling. So it's not this cure-all that's going to come and wash us with consciousness and we're all going to be walking around like Zen masters.
Good point.
What it's going to do is amplify whatever it is that you're feeling. And so that's why it's really important to try and master those emotions and take control, take the reins of how you're feeling, so that you're not spiraling out into a negative pit. And you can really optimize the effects of this wave. And one other way that I do this, and this is just a tip for anxiety in general, is laughter. Laughter is the easiest way to shift out of one emotion. So if you're feeling angry or anxious and you want to shift out of that, figure out a way to make yourself laugh, because the levity of it, it just shifts you out and it gives you a different perspective. So I do things that I know will make me laugh. I'm a huge fan of Damn You Autocorrect. That makes me laugh pretty hard. Okay. I like watching Thug Life videos.
What about also just kind of taking the time out of your life, your work life, and spending time with personal friends, people you really enjoy?
Yeah, I think that there's a tendency to kind of retreat.
Right.
Isolate yourself when you're feeling this way.
Actually,
I have a different way of dealing with it, and I think it's because I came from a really big family, and when you're around other people, you can't be stuck in that mood. They kind of just shake you out of it. They don't let you sulk or And you can feel the love and comfort and security of being here with other people, because that's what we're here to do. We're all here for each other, and we're here to enjoy each other's company. So don't stay alone. People go crazy by themselves.
Em, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's also important to realize that mastering your emotional body is not being emotionless, but rather it's how quickly you transition from,
Good point.
identifying that you're having an anger or a reaction, take a breath, and then decide what to do. Don't be reactatory, choose your actions instead of reacting.
Absolutely. We have a full spectrum of emotions for a reason. So it's not wrong to feel angry or anxious or sad. It's just about how quickly you return to happy, to centered, to grounded, to grateful. That's where the mastery comes from. I used to have a really technical job, and it was about mastering a skill. And one of the things that I came to understand was mastery is not about being perfect. It's about committing to excellence every single time.
So Em and Miss M, you both made a reference to the topic of the old man, and you said you'd like to address him in greater detail. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll start by sharing how my relationship with the old man started, or the real old man, because there's two of them. It was actually my first contact. It happened before I was contacted by the Lemurians. That was just a more profound experience, I would say, where I traveled and got brought into kind of a deeper understanding of everything. But I had been visited by the old man before that. So it actually happened to me in a dream state. And as many of you know, we're not really just sleeping at night. We're living other lives in our dreams. We're traveling to other dimensions. We're doing a lot more than just sleeping. So this particular night, I was having this really strange dream where I was in France, and I was standing in front of the Champs-Élysées, or the Arc de Triomphe. And there was like a bellhop, or a concierge desk. And I was interacting with a person behind the desk and placing some sort of order, and they were kind of like pulling things out of the air. And I looked to my left, and there is an ancient Chinese man standing next to me. And when I say ancient, he wasn't old. Like, he appeared to be probably between 30 and 40 years old. But he was ancient in era. He looked kind of like Confucius to me.
Okay.
And so as soon as I looked at him, my eyes locked with his. And when they did, all of the physical energy drained out of my body. And in my dream, I fell to the ground, and I was laying on the ground. But I could actually feel my physical body pinned to my bed, where I couldn't move at all. Now, he hovered over me, and he began to whisper something to me. Now, it was like he was yelling at me, but it was a whisper. And I really have this feeling that if he were to speak to me in his regular voice, it would have shattered me, because he's so powerful. So he was whispering to me, and he said something over and over and over again. It's the only thing that he said. And he said, stick with the big one, marry the big one. Stick with the big one, marry the big one. Stick with the big one, marry the big one. Now, I didn't know what that meant at that time. I didn't know what any of this meant. This was over 5 years ago when this happened. I've come to understand what it means, and it's relevant to what the council refers to me as. They call me the little one. And I think it's because they're all these ascended beings that are really tall. And I'm not.
Right. Right. Got it.
And two of the people on our team that could be considered the big one. So it was a cryptic message, just like many other messages that they give me. Well, about a week after this, I was having a reading with Michael Alameda, the medium that initiated me into this world. And about 3 hours into it, at the end of it, he says to me, I never see anybody's guides. It's a very rare occasion that spirit guides reveal themselves to me. But there's one of your guides here, and he's an ancient Chinese man, and he looks like Confucius. So I'm kind of dumbfounded, like, oh my God, this dream that I had.
There he is.
Here he is. Here's this guy.
Right.
So I ended up having multiple interactions with him over the years. He's come to me many, many times. He's one of my main spirit guides, if you will. I did eventually, a year after that, meet him by name in the realm of, in the spiritual realm, where it goes sometimes to do this work. I have no idea where it is, so.
I'm just curious, is there anything profound, or are there any profound events that have transpired in your life recently in which this old man played a major role that you'd like to share with people?
Yes, what I was going to say, though, is, when I finally met him by name, he introduced himself to me as Lao Tzu. So some of you may know who that is. He's gone by many names. Some know him as Lord Lanto. Some know him as Confucius. And my partner M knows him by a different name. So I think the most profound thing about my interaction with this ancient Chinese man is that he's highly integrated in with the Alliance and with the group that we have been working with for all of these years. And I'll let M share some more about that.
Sure, there's a lot of mystery and intrigue around who these individuals are, and the first time that this kind of got brought to my attention, as I said in segment 1, when I got pulled off the street at age 25 and told about these elders and platforms, and they used some initials of the guy that was really in charge above it all, and they said his initials were RW. And then all those years later, a couple decades later, when I got really deeply involved in the new banking system, they used the same initials of RW, and they told me that he was the real old man, a couple thousand years old, and was an ascended master, and was basically the custodian or guardian over all of these assets and systems to make sure that everything was protected and done right. And so we used to get updates passed down to us from him, that you're almost there, keep going. Some of your team members are going to go through some deeper initiations, etc. And, in the end, they also told us that when the new system is all complete, it's going to be turned over to the King of Kings. So everybody was kind of wondering and debating what that meant.
Right.
We have our theories about that. And I've always had the pleasure and have felt blessed that individuals that have skill sets similar to Mrs. M were there to enable me to talk to some of these higher dimensional beings and ask questions. And there was one time, actually more than one time, but one that stands out the most, when I had a conversation with this Ascended Master Lanto, and he was saying that he knew me, and that the golden age is happening, and continue on the path, and yes, everything that I've been envisioning my whole life is happening, and that he was very proud of me. And so I think we each have kind of an intimate relationship with these old men. So without saying too much, there is a divine plan, and it's being guided by ultra-dimensional beings, extra-dimensional,
higher dimensional,
interdimensional,
right. All
ascended,
the above.
all the above.
I just call them aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So speaking about aliens, both of you approached me and said that you wanted to provide more insight and information regarding this reptilian creature known as Marduk. Ms. M, go ahead.
Yeah, so my knowledge of him is not that extensive, actually. So if M wants to explain who Marduk is, then I will explain my interactions with this being.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, he was the head of the Illuminati. He was the reptilian that had been alive on the planet for a long time. And some people have said that he's Anunnaki, but he was wearing a human suit. And he had a bunch of, I like to call them minions underneath him that were orchestrating many things. And so when he was eliminated just about 2 years ago, we've been able to go further faster since then. And Miss M is going to tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah, so it was late summer 2016 when this happened. And I was involved in an operation that took out 157 Cabal members worldwide. And Marduk was the prime target. So now my participation in this event was this, that I communicated with the Galactics to the warriors on the ground, identifying targets and locations, and providing strategies of removal for these individuals. So there were many targets. At that time, it was mostly non-American Cabal members, because this was like shortly before the election. And so many American Cabal members are high up in the American political system. And if they were to have died or disappeared at that moment, it would have been far too visible. So now I say there were two other women that I worked directly with. Now, it's my understanding that there were other psychics around the planet that were involved with this operation, but I worked directly with two other women, and they did most of the heavy lifting as far as like getting rid of these characters, because my role is that of a communicator and not as a warrior. So okay. I'm not able to participate in that sort of activity. So I identified the targets, and at that time there were 3 human suits that Marduk was using, and we eliminated all of them. And he was taken out. There were 150 members of the Cabal that were in a meeting. It was a financial meeting, something similar to like a G8 summit. We had members of our team in the room at the time, in attendance of this meeting, and they confirmed that these 150 were taken out. It was done with a AMP type device, where there was just all of them in one swoop, and that was handled by our friends in the sky. And so I will say that Hillary Clinton was one of the targets of this attack. However, it was decided that 2 of the people that we eliminated just had their reptilians entities removed. So Hillary Clinton was one of them, and if you remember, she was very sick right after this. So this was a large source of her vitality. This is keeping her alive. Some of you may have seen her take a tumble down some stairs in India last week. She's been very sick for a long time, and as the frequency raises on this planet, a lot of these people are having difficulty living in this environment, and while the access to the means that they use to keep themselves alive has been out of their reach, they've been going down fast. So Hillary was one of the targets. Her reptilian entity was removed. And another target was the Queen of England. Her reptilian entity was also removed at that time. Now, there was a brief posting on her website that was up for about an hour after, a few days after this attack, saying that the Queen had died. And then it was taken down. So she may have passed at that point when the reptilian entity was removed from her, because again, these things are keeping them alive. They're like,
Right.
they're like human puppets. And so, I can't confirm that. This is just, I know I participated in this, and I communicated the locations and the tactics to remove these reptilian beings, but another woman went in and did it. Another one was an African warlord was taken out at that time. And there was one other one that was removed, and he / she was a Chinese individual. I don't know if anybody watches the show Mr. Robot, but they portray this individual in that show. It's somebody who's considerably wealthy and well-connected and involved in these shadow groups, who dresses as both a man and a woman, but his gender is male. He was one of the targets of this removal, as well as 7 of their server farms that were taken out at that time as well. And these were where they were storing some of their information, and with some of the computing power that was allowing them to put out these kind of negative waves out into the planet. So it was part of their hub of control. So those were taken out at the same time. So Marduk, again, like I said, he had 3 at the time that he was embodying, and all 3 of those were taken out as well.
I think it's also important to add to this, because a lot of people may be thinking, wow, taken out, what do you mean by that? Well, there was, over 5 years ago, a lot of channeled information about it's time to come to the light. You really, have to, the opposition, the dark must come to the light, and they gave some deadlines. And if you don't, by this time, there's a possibility that your soul could be recycled back into source energy. And these dates came and went, and nothing really happened.
That's right.
So they were warned.
And warned.
Very warned.
And warned again. Right.
And we've been told that we've been behind schedule with the Golden Age and Ascension, and we're going to talk about that next, a little bit about some of those timings and some things that have happened. But I also wanted to say that, thank God that we have the likes of archangels and ascended masters that are embodied and incarnate, because we've had some nefarious individuals, that have been at the head of a lot of corruption. And as many of you know or realize, the intent to kill billions of people is what the Illuminati had planned for us. And so it is also interesting, maybe a little update on one of the discussions that happened that we weren't in on, but our top partners shared that, the people, there's a council behind the Federal Reserve. They said, okay, we'll give you the keys to the system and you can move your money around if you give us immunity. And we were told that they just laughed and said, there's no way. You genocide folks are getting immunity, you baby killers, et cetera, et cetera. And so, thank God that, the phrase, we're the ones we've been waiting for, has to do with all these beings that are realizing we're multidimensional, we're much more, in this body than most people understand. And our stories have corroborated that. And my own experience, speaking of aliens, I went on board a mothership when I was 29, consciously aware. I was brought up, and there was ascended masters there with ETs, and they told me about my involvement in the future, and so it is so multifaceted. It really is a divine orchestration, as I continue to emphasize, and thank God.
So we've been talking about the elimination of Marduk and other not so helpful aliens on this planet. Let's talk about another topic you wanted to address, which is the relocation of planet Earth and how it affects our own perception of what's going on in the skies.
Okay, so it was actually right after the operation of elimination of Cabal members that another really profound thing happened. At the time, I was working with another woman and another 3-letter agency, and I was doing a lot of channeling and remote viewing and things of that nature. And so I was in the field kind of like 8 hours a day, and so because of that, like all these really strange experiences were happening, and I was living in the desert, like by myself at the edge of the desert, just me and some mountains, and I was doing this work, and so I've taken this massive like leap of faith to do this stuff, and it's been pretty crazy the whole time. So I like to occasionally go out and like shout at the sky.
Okay.
demand answers. And so this particular night I was outside with another woman that I was working with, and we were looking up at the sky, and I was just asking like, okay, how do we know when this is happening? How do we know when this golden age begins?
Okay.
And a voice pops into my head, as it does often, and it says, there will be a new bright star in the sky at the beginning of the golden age. And I said, great, okay, well, look for the bright star. And so I go in the house, and I go to bed, and that night another one of these strange occurrences happened, because I'm often being like dragged out of bed in the middle of the night to go on these random missions, or I have no idea what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. I'm just following
leap of faith.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Following these crazy orders. So I got taken to a place that they referred to as the place between worlds. And it was interesting because it was like very narrow. It was probably like maybe 4 or 5 feet across, this area, and it was like all monochromatic and muted colors. Like it was sunny. It was like sun was out, but it was like a gray day. Like it was,
Sure.
There was nothing was bright there, and I was standing in between like 2 walls of fog, this heavy mist, and so they have me walk all the way down to this spot, and they say, okay, now stick your hand through the fog. So I put my hand through there, and a hand grabs me from the other side, and it starts to bind me with this other hand. So there's like this leather strap that they're wrapping around my hand and the hand of the individual on the other side. And it looks like, have you ever seen the like Teflon strap the Hasidic Jews use for prayer?
Oh, okay. Right.
And so it looked like this, and they wrapped it around me, and I'm bound to this other person. It felt like some sort of like strange like marriage ceremony. And so I have my hand in the mist, and they say, okay, now pull. And so I like pull my hand back as hard as I can, and everything kind of goes like, and it's like it shifts, and then they release my hand, and they say, okay, now when you go back to your planet, be very careful, because the heavens are now closer to the earth. and your manifesting abilities are stronger for everybody. So just be careful what you manifest into your life. So that ends the experience. I go back and then I wake up, and the next day I go out at night, and lo and behold, there's a new bright star in the sky, and it's Venus. And
in a different position.
Yeah, it was in a different position than it's ever been. It was brighter and bigger than I've ever seen it. And for about a year, it stayed in this position where we would see it all the time.
Well, because what normally does, the sun goes down. And frankly, if you go out right now and try to see this, we've shifted. It's changed. It's doing what it used to do. Sun goes down, half hour later or so, you see...
Venus comes up.
Of course, it's the evening star. It's also the morning star, but I'm talking about the evening version. It sets,
Okay.
Well, that's not what it did for about a year. It just hung out up there because we were relocated. Continue.
Yes. So,
All right.
Even elders were talking about it in blogs.
Yeah, I started noticing, like, there were these Native Americans that are contacting NASA saying, hey, the stars have moved. We're not in the same place anymore. And so there was validation that we had moved, and there was a new star there. The Venus was there. And the interesting thing about Venus is that I've had a lot of visions of this planet. I remember living here. And I look at it and I call it the planet where gods live. Because there's a certain dimension on Venus that the Kamaras come from.
Right.
And
there's higher dimensional life on Venus.
And so
right.
they're Sanat Kamara is the planetary logo. So one might consider the Kamaras are, one of our gods, one of our creators or influencers, if you will.
Okay.
It's just a way of thinking about it. Now, I want to clarify that, do I think that I went out and moved the planet with my little hand? No, I don't think so. I just think that they communicate things to me in very strange ways. And, there could have been people all over the planet that were taken that night to participate in this event. But later they explained to me why it is that they moved us. Now, and this goes into the whole timeline thing too, because there was a timeline and there was an agenda to kill off a large percentage of our population. So one of the reasons that they moved us was because we were in the gravitational pull of Nibiru. And this gravitational pull would have caused a pole shift that would have wiped out 90% of our population, because 90% of the population is concentrated on the coastal regions. And there was also an attempt by the cabal to aid in this process, to ensure that it happened. Which has been thwarted by our friends in the sky
a few times.
Yes. On multiple occasions.
True.
So,
yep.
So one of the reasons, was to, now our magnetic poles are shifting. There's some wobbling going on. We're
That's
not
right.
completely out of the pull, but it's enough that we can make adjustments to our poles and not lose 90% of our population. So that was one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons was there was a giant asteroid coming towards us that was going to hit the planet that would have caused significant damage and quite a bit of chaos. And so they pulled us out of the path of this asteroid. And the third reason they said to me that they did this was we are currently passing through a photon belt that is causing the planet's vibration to raise.
True.
It's causing the ascension of the planet. And so in order to stay in alignment with this photon belt, in order to stay in alignment with the Golden Gate and the belt stars of Orion, where the pyramids are aligned to, which M can tell you more about because that's what his whole, work is based on.
Okay.
This was another purpose for moving us at that time. Now, the timelines have changed again since then, so I don't know if that means we're back in the same position or, I'm not really a star expert. I just know that at that point in time, we had moved and the sky looked different than it ever had before, and Venus was much closer than it ever had been. And they had told me that there was a very small window that they could work with in order to move us, because in order to not disrupt the illusion that we live in.
Right.
So that the sky would look pretty much the
Pretty
same.
close.
Pretty close enough that people wouldn't notice. Wouldn't notice like terribly, So I think that's about it when it comes to our relocation.
Okay, thank you. I know that Em would like to talk about a corollary topic having to do with the Golden Gate. So I'll turn it over to him right now and let him share his personal story.
All right, thank you. I think it's important to say that I mentioned about going on board a mothership consciously. This is the first time I've ever said that on the radio or in a public format, because back when that happened, there was actually some hidden law that if you interacted with ETs, you could, be picked up and interrogated. And I actually used to take groups out, and I would call for a flyby. And sure enough, a couple ships, scout ships would fly by, and then they stopped doing that after a while, and they said it's too dangerous. And that's about the time that some images or footage was being released about how we had technology that could shoot these ships down, or attempt to. And so I thought it was important to reference that I'm coming out of the closet on a couple of different fronts, because the cabal is being receded enough, and there are further takedowns that are happening, and it's time for truth, time to empower the people with these kind of stories. And another thing I think I'm going to do, since we have some confusion about M, Miss M, and as I demonstrated, calling Miss MM, I think I'm going to give you my author's name, and that'll lead you to some insight into a deeper understanding of the things I'm going to bring up next. And that has to do with, one way to introduce that is when I had the cosmic scientist, Cosmo, come into my life. He actually told me that when I got back from Egypt and all these powerful things happened to me inside the Great Pyramid on November 22nd at the hour of 11:22, which was a number that kept showing up in my life, and it became significant that was the golden date. He told me that he was freaked out a little bit when he saw me because he had seen a picture of me before. And it took him 5 years to tell me these things, as I mentioned last time. And he was essentially telling me that because he worked in these underground bases and stuff.
So when you say picture, are you saying photograph?
Yes.
Okay. So all right, continue.
When he was working in the underground bases, the white budget ones.
Okay.
He was known for that. And so when he went to Egypt, he was actually taken into some secret room, and they showed him the items that were found in Imhotep's tomb. So I'm revealing a little more that he actually told me that it was a photograph of me and a woman with dark hair. And so he basically disclosed that he knew that I was Imhotep, and said some other things about who I was and what I would do. And so all these things tie together in the sense that earlier in my youth, I had this number flashing on the clock, much like people have 1111 or other synchronistic numbers that are meaningful to them. Mine was November 22nd, or 1122. And each November, the energy would increase, and it would get stronger and stronger. This happened to me for like 7 years, where it was really getting intense, and it would sort of release on the 22nd. of November.
Okay.
And so I have put together a lot of videos on this subject. We talked about the seventh seal activator in the intro to this segment, which is to do with frequency, what I call meta-numerology, and meta-sacred geometry that tie to astro theology and the alignment of the Great Pyramid pointing the way to the Golden Gate. And so all this content, these books that I wrote, which is how Miss M found me, I wrote about 20 years ago, but I've been downloading and accessing even more information that I wasn't allowed to start releasing until now. In fact, 4 Easters ago when we had the sixth seal happen, and we had what I call the Blood Moon Alley, where we had all these eclipses and celestial events,
right.
grand crosses, all these astrological things have been occurring to increase people's consciousness. They told me that I would start to be able to release some at that time, and my own guidance system said that when the seventh seal happened, I could begin to come out even more. And so in the last November, we had the seventh seal open, the alignment of the Golden Gate. So we've, really entered. A lot of people are, thinking it's the age of Aquarius. It could very well be. Each age is about 2,100 years. So, some people are predicting it's not really until, another decade. But nonetheless, there's these alignments that have occurred. And if you want to find out more about all of this, this is where you can go to Tolec's website, and you can click on his next event. You can click on speakers, and Miss M and I are going to be speaking there. And there's a link that goes to 7sealcodes.com, and you'll see the book that I wrote called The Seventh Seal, Hidden Wisdom Unveiled. And you'll see my author's name, which is Methuselah Imhotep. And so I do have a birth name. I'm going to keep that withheld for a while. But nonetheless, I think it's important to have this information and understanding at this time that these things have been prophesied. They've been foreseen. For example, this Golden Gate was in the Egyptian calendar, and there's a corresponding silver gate, and that's 5/22, which is actually my birthday. So it's just quite profound that we've all reincarnated over and over. Our reincarnation has been, preparing for this time, and it's just my honor and my pleasure to be serving humanity in this way. I really feel that I'm here on a mission, and it hasn't been easy, but we've finally reached a point where it's evident that the tides are tipping and the Golden Gate is open, and so let's walk through it together.
Wow, thank you. And I'll provide some specific information regarding the reference that he made to M and Miss M speaking. This coming September in Sedona, the last weekend of September, the 28th through the 30th, I'll be hosting, along with Joe Anthony of Planets Within, a conference called The Great Awakening, Messages from Our Galactic Family. And for any of you who are interested, again, M and Miss M will be 2 of the key speakers. They'll be speaking on Saturday. It will take place in Sedona, and you can learn about it at the transformationalshift.com, actually transformationalshiftevents.com website. And there's a page called 2018 Sedona Conference. So if you go there, you can read about all the speakers. There's also scheduled activities, and you'll learn about the actual date and time that M and Miss M will be speaking. So for all of you who are interested, we hope that you'll join us. So what is next for our planet?
Okay. I want to talk about something that I've been hearing a lot in various circles. It's this concept that there are going to be 2 planets, 2 Earths. that we're splitting off. Which I kind of find funny because it's like
funny.
it's like a rapture, right? Like all of us good and faithful are going to be lifted off to a new and improved planet. We're going to leave all you jokers behind. So,
Go ahead.
here's my problem with that. It just like reeks of superiority. The reason that we are awake and aware and conscious is so that we can show the way to other people, to wake them up. It was a gift that we were given to come here with this knowledge, or to be awakened into this knowledge while we are here, while others are captive and comfortable. It's hard to see that sometimes because it's a little bit more challenging to exist in a world is wrong. But it's actually a gift to be here. It's a gift to be human. It's a gift to be incarnated at this time. And it's a gift to be awake. And so it's not to make you feel superior to others who aren't getting it yet. It's so that you can turn and help those others and lend a hand and show them the way. Illuminate the path for them. And this also brings me back to, again, I talked about this before, this like experience I had with Sai Baba. And it was a couple years ago before I moved to here, which is Sedona, because so we live in Sedona. And I knew that I was going to end up here eventually on my journey, because when I had the countdown given to me, when I was sitting on my couch and I had the countdown to 3 weeks, 4 days, 10 hours, 52 minutes, 22 seconds, it begins. Right after that, they showed me this thing that they wanted me to build. And it was what to me looked like a very fancy bathhouse at the time.
Okay.
It was these pyramids, these stone pyramids with these stone baths in them that had this water that was healing. And they told me, we need you to build this, and millions of people are going to come from all around the world to be healed. And each one of the baths does a different thing and heals something very specific. And then they showed me like a desert landscape and a rock formation that I later found out was Cathedral Rock. It's a pretty famous formation. It's a very iconic place on the planet. But I recognized that kind of a desert landscape. And I was like, okay, how am I going to, first of all, get money for this thing? How am I going to build a bathhouse in the middle of the desert? Like, where am I going to get water for this? So they showed me, like, okay, if you break ground right here, there is this ancient, they call it an ancient spring, but there's an aquifer that runs under us here. They said this water hasn't been touched by humans, and it's got all these minerals in it that will help heal you. And if you break ground here, it'll come up. And also, the pyramids play a part in that, because pyramids conjure water. So they bring the water up into these baths. And so I knew that I was going to end up in Sedona at some point, but every time when I checked in, they were like, not yet, not yet. First I had to travel all over the country and live in all these random places.
Of course.
So right before I made my journey out here, I was headed east. I thought I was going to Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, but I needed a landing pad, and there was a job waiting for me on the other end, and so I'm sitting on the couch and getting ready to go, and Sai Baba pops in, and he says, "You are going to head east, but you will not make it past the red desert." And then he showed me a pyramid raising out of the red dirt, and then he showed me an obelisk raising out of the red dirt, and then he said to me, and I'll never forget this because it's just so profound and so layered. He said, "When you are one, then you are done." And there's so many layers to this, and we've dissected this before when we were talking about the like 7 transdimensional realities, but it also goes into this whole thing of unity consciousness and a unity timeline where we are all in this together. And nobody's blasting off to a new Earth and leaving other people behind. It's all about all of us rising up with our planet into a higher dimensional reality, ascending into a better way of living, into a golden age for our planet. And so I really just don't like it when people say this, that they're going to, we're too different, there's too much division. That's all part of the program. We're all the same. We're all one. We're all, essentially the same kind of beings. We have the same DNA, most of us, with variations here and there, right?
Of course.
But we also are not that far away from a banana or a gorilla. So it's like, how different do those variations make us? And so think to yourself this. Would you be okay with this scenario if you got left behind? What if you think that you're blasting off to the new Earth, but the very idea of this concept means that you don't get to go along? Are you still okay with that? Is that still the reality that you're envisioning for the future? Or would you much rather us all hold hands and march together into the future? Because that is the reality. It's all about the unity consciousness. It's all about us all being in this together. It's not an us versus them or, a separation reality. It's all about one heart, one mind, one love, one planet. And that's it.
All right. So I understand the nuances of this topic, but I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying in terms of when the higher dimensional shift of this planet takes place. It will shift from being an organic planet to a higher dimensional planet, one single planet, making its own new birth, its own evolutionary step. So you're saying that, and you're also saying that people can choose to make the transformation along with this planet as well.
We're all going. I don't think it's a choice. I don't think that you can choose to stay behind. I don't think there's a behind to stay with. I think that we're all ascending, and it's just going to be a little bit more difficult for others. The transition's going to be a little harder depending on where you are on your path. But that's why we're meant to help each other out.
Well, let me add my perspective over all these years.
Sure.
I've been on my spiritual path since I was 19 when I had some very profound things wake me up. And, even 25 years ago, people were like, yeah, the ships are going to come and take us. All these different interpretations of what ascension was, or, these different beliefs that I just never resonated with. I was like, well, I believe that we're going with the planet. And I used to talk about ascension as expanding consciousness and shifting consciousness into higher awareness of our multidimensional self as ascension, and not just turning into light. And even though, ascended masters have perhaps done that before, I think that it's more about all of us realizing our capacity to become multidimensional beings. And so, in my experience, I also have been drawn to Sedona since I first came in 1997. And I actually had a very profound experience in Egypt when I was on top of the Great Pyramid. There was this energy rushing through me on September 22nd in the middle of the night. And it was very profound. I felt energy coming in and going out of my head. And when I came home and went to a conference, there was a guy speaking about he just got back from Egypt and he was working with releasing the Ascension Flame, which apparently was also in Atlantis. And he said it was being split off. It was going through the top of the Great Pyramid and being split off. One part of it went to Sedona, one part went to Maui, and one part went to Colorado. And at the lunch break, I went up to him and I'm like, when did you say that was? He was like, September 22nd, like midnight. And I was like, I was on top of the Great Pyramid. It was going right through me. And so before I got into all this finance stuff, I wanted to move up here to Sedona because, my guidance system was directing me that energy is in Cathedral Rock. And I wanted to build a healing center. And so that's since been transformed into, we're starting a lot here, a foundation here, a healing center here, also an activation station is what I like to call it, and where everybody gets cleaned out and plugged in, and you can, be in this master database that we're talking about. You can be plugged into your perfect job or your perfect project is funded. And, we're starting here and we're going to cookie cut that all over the planet with these advanced healing technologies. With just everything that we can bring to bear that is super transformative. We also want to do a good news network, a broadcast network, along with the conscious media that we're doing, but basically like reporting on all the transformation on the planet, and have it be on network news, or mainstream media, so people are getting the updates in real time about the progress of this global transformation. I think that ascension means different things to different people, but it's really about becoming more of who we are. And in my belief system, I believe the Elohim are the original 12 males and 12 females, and they created everything. They created, universes, races, and then they imbued themselves into those, bifurcations, shards, whatever you want to say, experiencing everything. And so I believe that we're all kind of just duplicates of those original beings. So I don't even subscribe to this whole business that, there's only one out there that's my perfect mate, my twin flame, or, my divine complement. Yeah. I think that I've met many that fit that bill. Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit about my belief along the lines of who we are, why we are, and where we're going.
Yeah, so, Sedona has become this central hub, and that's another part of what Baba told me when I had that conversation with him, was that, this is the new spiritual Mecca, and that it's calling people home. Mm. And so there are other things going on here underground, with the inner earth beings that are located right below us, that are contributing to the city of light that's being built here, and contributing to all the people that are being called here. So it's very exciting time to be in this region and to be breaking ground on the new earth.
All right, well, thank you. As we bring segment 3 to a close, what are some of the more, if you will, heartfelt topics that you'd like to address?
I think that in the world that we live in, that, we're veiled, we're living in this illusion, and you have to work really hard to understand what the truth is, and you have to kind of listen with your heart. The best thing that we can do, the only thing that you can do as an individual for your own path and your own purpose, is just be a good person. And that's it. Just be a good person. It's that simple. And I think that's it for today from me.
Yeah.
So all the spiritual terms and definitions aside, and all the different beliefs that maybe are entertained, I concur with Miss M that service to others and heart-centered ways of being are the most important. I remember when I was like 8 years old and I had a dream, and that dream happened the very next day. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, there's more going on than meets the eye here. But my next thought was, I just want to be the best person I can be.
Yeah.
If there are ways to be better, stronger, faster, I want to use it to be as helpful as I can. And I think in those simple terms, those are the kind of people we want to meet. Those are the kind of people that we welcome to join us. Those that just feel like, how can I be of greater service? And that's who we are.
Yeah. Well, you certainly, the both of you echo a sentiment I wake up with every day, which is, how can I be a better man? How can I be of service to anybody that I encounter on a daily basis? Whether my actions are small or large, I somehow want to make a positive impact. So I want to thank you for involving me in the first 3 of these segments. Em, you were telling me about a new deep disclosure website that you've created. Why don't you shed some light on what that's going to be about?
Okay, great. Yeah, that is going to be deepdisclosure.com. We'll have it up in a couple days. It'll be a place where we're putting additional updates as they come out in a more timely fashion. And we would like you to visit it and give us your email so we can put you on a list also as everything develops. We'll be taking in projects and the like, plans, and just, working from there as soon as possible. It should be up in a couple of days, so we look forward to getting to know you more.
Alrighty, so for M and Miss M and me, Tolec, for the Andromeda Council, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.